Hey everybody, welcome to my video. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about how this whole health situation that I've been dealing with for the last number of months started. This episode is all about my transient ischemic attack, or what you'd call a mini stroke. So, April 16th of 2024. I had been up and down dealing with a good volume of stress for a prolonged period of time leading up to that date. I would frequently wake up early with my brain buzzing and not being able to sleep. So that happened again that morning. So I got up early. It was 4:50 a.m. and I was laying in bed. I was like, there's going to be no more sleep happening on this night. So I got up, got dressed, stepped outside, and let all the dogs out into the yard so they could relieve themselves. And as I was standing there, I suddenly got this really uncomfortable tingling in my right hand. And then shortly after that, within a few seconds, the right part of my mouth, the lower part of my mouth here, started having the same tingling. Now, I'm in healthcare. I'm a licensed chiropractor, and there is heart disease and stroke in the history in my family. So immediately I knew something was going on, and the situation resolved itself very, very quickly. But I suspected right away that I had a transient ischemic attack, or what's known as a TIA, again, known commonly as a mini stroke. I had seen my father have one of these when he was alive years ago. I remember it happened in the living room one day, and he was kind of trying to shake it off. I don't think he ever did a significant follow-up after that. He might have made an appointment with the doctor, but he didn't do an immediate follow-up. But nonetheless, I had seen this before, and he was a little younger than it happened to me. I'm 57. I remember this happening to him when he was in his mid 50s, like a 53, 54 years old. But anyway, so I had this, and this resolved very quickly. It was all kind of gone within about 15, maybe 20 seconds. But I knew right away what had happened. But it resolved. And I felt normal afterwards, so I just kind of stupidly went about my morning routine. So I went at breakfast, I got a little exercise, I went and had a shower, I got ready to go to work. And as I went in to kiss my wife goodbye for the day, I told her what had happened, and she stopped me in my tracks and told me in no uncertain terms that I had to go to the hospital. I made the good decision, which was to listen to her. Anyway, we went to the ER. When we got to the ER, and I'm going to do a follow-up video about my ER experience and managing some of the administrative stuff that I dealt with at the hospital. But this time I just want to focus on the health side of things for this particular video. So anyway, we went to the ER. They drew blood. I mean, they set me up in a bed in the emergency room area there. They set me up in a bed on a little cot there. I had blood drawn. I had a brain MRI throughout that day. I had an echocardiogram the following morning. I did end up spending the night there. I didn't want to, but I did. They showed me through the course of the day that there was evidence of a past stroke event in my brain. There was a little spot on my brain that was kind of blacked out. Not a big area, just a very, very small spot. But they didn't show any evidence of anything recent. So that was good. And I didn't feel any consequences of what had happened earlier that day. I had no neurological deficits. They asked me to hold my hand out and touch my nose and stuff like that, and I can still do that without any trouble. So there's no neurological deficits that came as a result of this issue that I was aware of. But anyway, so we drew blood, we did the brain MRI, and the following morning we did an echocardiogram. The blood draw and the general physical stuff they did there showed that I had an elevated blood pressure, which for me, what they measured was 130/88 in that time in the ER, which might not seem super high, but when you're an active, health conscious person, for the most part, that number got my attention. They said I had an elevated LDL, which is what is known as the bad cholesterol level. And, it was, they want to keep it under 120. Mine was around like 186, I believe, at the time. Anyway, and the echocardiogram the next morning showed that the aortic valve of my heart had calcified, which means it had hardened. It had calcium deposits on it. It was bicuspid. So bicuspid means that the valve has two leaflets. So normally an aortic valve, the aortic valve in your heart is the heart the part of your heart, it's the last valve that blood goes out of, that carries oxygen that goes out to the rest of your body. So blood without oxygen goes in on the right side of your heart, it gets pumped to your lungs and then back into your heart where it pumps it out to your body. The valve that it goes through when it goes out to your body from that point is the aortic valve. Normally those valves have three leaflets, or is what's known as a tricuspid. Mine happened to be a bicuspid, and this is just a genetic, some might call it a defect, but nevertheless, it's a genetic anomaly. Happens in about 2% of the population, so I won the genetic lottery on that one. And it was bicuspid, and bicuspid aortic valves tend to wear out faster than tricuspid aortic valves do. So mine was wearing out, and the TIA, or the mini stroke, was the first little tap on the shoulder that something was up. And they found that on the echocardiogram. So, while I was in the hospital, I started doing a lot of my own looking into this process. So I started Googling a lot of scholarly articles from different sources, from Harvard Health, from the Cleveland Clinic, from Mayo Clinic, a variety of sources that were referenced, reputable sources. Watched a lot of YouTube videos produced by these sources as well, and also a lot of YouTube videos from cardiology conferences talking about these issues. So I continued to do that after I left the hospital. So I did a lot of homework to get a really clear understanding as to the ins and outs of this. So effectively what happens when someone has a stroke, whether it's a major stroke or a mini stroke, is some type of either blood clot or a piece of plaque, like a piece of hard fatty deposit in an artery, breaks free and travels through and blocks an artery on its way to the brain. So in my case, because I didn't have, my LDL was a little high, but I didn't have a lot of classic signs of atherosclerosis. So they postulated that it was more than likely a blood clot that formed in my heart, in the left atrium, which is one of the upper chambers of the heart. And then that had traveled through and it had created this temporary blockage. So in the hospital, they recommended that I go on two medications. They recommended that I go on a blood thinner called Eliquis, and they recommended that I go on a statin drug. Now, I didn't want to go on a statin drug, but I was comfortable going on the blood thinner because of my genetic past. So I spoke to the cardiologist and to the internist there, and I said, I'd like an opportunity to correct the cholesterol levels with lifestyle. But I'm good to go on the blood thinner for safety reasons. And the blood thinner basically is an anticoagulant. So that prevents these blood clots from forming and protects me against having another stroke episode. So anyway, I've been on that since then. And it's been fine. I haven't had any issues that I'm aware of with it. So it's a 5 milligram dose twice a day. So anyway, so that was the result there. And, as my wife Paige and I were leaving the hospital the next day, the hospital wants to keep you overnight because most of the time a mini stroke or a TIA is like a warning bell of a more major event that's coming. So they like to keep, and usually those happen within about the first 12 to 24 hours after the initial incident. So we went into the ER at 10 a.m. They kept me there for 24 hours, and then they let me go midday the next day. And I set up follow-ups with the cardiologist after that. So if you go to the ER after one of these situations, be prepared to spend the night. I did have some issues with spending the night. No stroke issues or anything like that, but nevertheless, I did have some run-ins with some administrative issues with the hospital that began on that overnight stay, and I'm going to document those in a future video. So anyway, as we were leaving the hospital, Paige and I had a really serious discussion about what was going on, and I decided to implement some very serious lifestyle changes from this. So we made some significant dietary changes. I cut out most, if not all, highly processed food. The things that I really gave up that I was eating regularly were deli meat and cheese. Very hard, no deli meat really since then, and really no cheese to speak of in any quantity. I mean, I think I've maybe had some cheese 2 or 3 times in 8 months since then. So that's been consistent. I also started becoming really consistent with my exercise again and tracking my heart rate to make sure that I was keeping it within appropriate zones. And the other thing I started doing was I started tracking my blood pressure every day. And I bought this device called a cardiomobile device. Now, I should have brought this straight over here from this video, but I'm going to reach over and grab it. Here it is. So cardiomobile device is a little strip. It looks like this. They didn't pay me in this video to show you this, so I'm not a shill for cardiomobile. But anyway, this checks your EKG basically. So it gives you a medical grade EKG so that you can tell are your pulse dynamics normal? Are you in atrial fibrillation, and the like? So with those changes in place and being very, very strict and consistent about it, I started tracking my food with what I was eating to make sure I was staying on track. Over the 8 months, I've lost 30 pounds. So I went from about between 187 and 189 pounds. Now I'm between 157-ish to 160 on any given day. My LDL levels or cholesterol levels normalize after 3 months. So I had a visit with a primary care doctor, and they took blood, and my LDL levels had come down to 107. So now normally, the ER doctors and so forth are going to want to try to get you under 70 if you've had some type of a stroke incident. But it had normalized enough that my primary care doctor was totally good with me continuing to address this stuff through lifestyle. That's been a good benefit. So, and I also lowered my blood pressure. My blood pressure in the incident there was in the 130/88 range. I've got it back down now to it averages around 110/82 in the low 80s. So my blood pressure is a lot better. And in a recent test that I had where they did a catheterization of my heart, they were able to confirm that there's no arterial blockages, there's very little plaque buildup. So healthy living has been positive in that respect. Now, one goal that I had that I was hoping to accomplish with all these lifestyle changes was to slow the calcification process, see if I could buy myself some time on this. That didn't happen. Because I went and had, much to my disappointment, I went and had another echocardiogram in November, and it showed that the valve had gotten much narrower and it had calcified more. So it was in the severe categories now, and we were now looking at needing surgery. which brings us to where we are today, where, as I mentioned in a previous post, I'm scheduled to have aortic valve replacement on January 14th up in Dallas with Dr. Dulab at UT Southwestern. And this will be a minimally invasive approach where instead of bisecting my sternum, opening up my chest, he's going to go through my upper rib cage here and go down and replace the aortic valve with that. But again, I'll do a subsequent video on some of the stuff that that I'll be expecting there, and in my process of some of the items that I learned with that. So anyway, but the other lifestyle benefits were basically that my functionality is improved. The biggest improvement was, or one of the most noticeable improvements that I had was being less out of breath walking around in general. I drive an hour to and from work, and I used to get out of the car and be very, very stiff, and that went away after losing about 15 pounds. I was suddenly getting out of the car and just walking, and I was noticeable. I was like, wow, I'm not stiff getting out of the car. That's pretty cool. So that was nice. So I'm generally more functional. But moreover, my goal here was I knew I was heading towards surgery at some point. So my objective was to be in as good shape as I could be for surgery, so that I could recover fast. So that's the objective, and we're going to find out here in a few weeks whether that goal was accomplished by losing some weight and getting myself back into some good condition. So anyway, what I hope you take away from this video today is if something like this happens to you, if you have a mini stroke, a TIA, the warning signs are like a tingling that happens you might feel it in your face, you might feel it on a certain part of your body. It's not really like having a limb fall asleep. It's a tingling feeling, but it's a little painful, it's uncomfortable. And the tell that I had when I had the numbness on my lip was I tried calling one of my dogs to me. And I had trouble forming his name, and I could tell when I heard it that my voice wasn't right. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, okay, something serious is going on here. So pay attention to those signs. And if that does happen to you, my friends, please make sure you go and get yourself checked out. Because I knew my family history. I knew there might be something eventually that I'd be dealing with. I wasn't expecting it to hit as quickly as it did. So, when it happens, you're always like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. But live as healthy as you can. Pay attention to the signs if something like this happens to you, and don't ignore them. Because if you're aware of what's going on the inside of your body and the parts that you can't see, you can make solid changes to your behavior to support your processes moving forward, to support your wellness, and make sure that if something happens, it's just a little incident rather than something major that comes along and has catastrophic effects on your life. So that's what I hope everyone takes from today. Now I've learned a lot on the health side of things. I'm going to share more about that in my processes through the 7 months in the next video. And in the next video, I'm also going to talk about my experience in the emergency room in interacting with some of the medical professionals, which in general was very good, with one exception. And also we're going to start talking about some of the billing practices of the hospital and how hospitals overcharge you and get away with it if you're not careful. So we're going to talk about that next time. Until then, my name's Angelo. Peace, guys. Talk to you next time.